Scott Darlow, welcome to Australian Musician.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, mate.
Hey, you're in the middle of quite an extensive tour. You've got this album, new album, Deadly Heart, out on October 27. But before we get into any of that, I wanted to go way back. What did you grow up listening to? What were the musical influences that inspired your love for music?
So we grew up. There's four kids in the family, and Dad and Mum both loved music, but Dad particularly loved anything from Del Shannon through to Johnny Cash. He loved Johnny Cash. Through to the Beach Boys. There's a lot of the Beach Boys getting played, and the Beatles as well. And I remember being probably about 9, and he gave me a tape back in the day, a tape of the Beatles' greatest hits. And I think I wore that tape out, you know. And then I got to high school, and one of my mates told me about a band called Dire Straits, and I bought an album called Brothers in Arms, and that was all I listened to. And then from there, sort of got into Midnight Oil Heaps and Hunters and Collectors, and just great Aussie bands, just those Aussie bands of the '90s and the '80s, and was all I listened to as a kid, So,
Yeah. So when did you pick up the guitar?
Well, I started guitar when I was in grade 4. So I actually started playing the trumpet, or the cornet as it was, when I was 5. My parents were Salvation Army, and they put a cornet in my hand when I was 5, and I could just play it. And I was playing in a brass band with adults by the time I was 7. And then I was in grade 4, and we had a teacher at primary school, Mr. Page, who was unreal, and he taught the grade 6 kids a guitar club on a Wednesday lunchtime. And I just hassled him until I just couldn't wait, I said, mate, you got to teach me. And so he did. And grade 4, I was probably about, I don't know, 9. But what was really cool about that was I actually found him. He's retired. He lives in Wales with his wife. And I found him on Facebook, and I toured England a few years right before the pandemic. I toured and I played a show in Bath, and he drove over and had lunch with me. He remembered me, and we had lunch together, and I got to thank him for teaching me guitar, and I cried a bit, and he looked a bit nonplussed. But we've kept in touch, and every time I've got something coming out, I send it to him. And when I'm in England ever, I go and see him, and it's been really lovely.
That's great. Yeah. So what was your first pro gig, the first time you got paid to play music?
Oh gosh, mate, I was a teenager, I think, probably playing trumpet. By the time I was sort of 17 or 18, I was playing in cover bands, but I wanted to be James Morrison, so I would turn up to a gig with I taught myself how to play sax, so I'd have an alto sax, a tenor sax, a trumpet, a trombone, a didgeridoo. Mate, I was spending about an hour a night warming up, and that was sort of my tendency. And then I got a bit older as a late teenager, and I remember actually looking at, and it's funny that the tour I'm on at the moment, my mate Scotty Hayward is on tour with me playing guitar in my band, and we've been mates since we were teenagers, like literally, and he's an amazing player. But I remember watching him, because we grew up around the corner from each other, and I remember watching him turn up, take his guitar out of the case, and it took 10 seconds. Meanwhile, I'm upstairs in the pub office, warming up on a trumpet and then a trombone and then a saxophone. I'm like, mate, what am I doing? So, that was kind of the vibe.
Yeah. So you're on this quite extensive tour. Part of it is playing prisons and schools.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you?
Well, look, mate, one of the things I'm really passionate about, I'm an Aboriginal man from Yorta Yorta country. So mum's family's from, Shepherd and Echuca area. And there's a lot that's not okay in this country right now in regards to First Nations people. Like, 65 to 70% of all Australian adults have finished year 12, as opposed to 5% of Indigenous adults. So that means we don't have role models going through. There's a whole lot of kids I meet every day. Like, we spent the day yesterday at Tennant Creek High School, and there are kids there that, they probably can't even articulate it, but what they think in their spirit is, if I don't play AFL or NRL footy, I have no future. Because the only role models they've seen escape a generations deep poverty cycle have been footballers. So for those environments, it's great to be able to go and go, I struggled, man. I went to 7 schools. I hated school. I told a story yesterday when I was in year 11. I took off, or year 10, year 11. I wagged and went to the military office to join the military, because I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to play trumpet in their band. And my dad found out, my brother told him, and he dragged me out and, didn't let me do it. Thank God. But for our kids, it's important that they understand how important it is to finish school. So a part of those shows is helping them understand that. But then I go to a lot of private schools where there's no blackfellas, but I go in, and I used to be a school teacher myself. I ended up, ironically, going to uni and studying education, and getting to talk to privileged kids around this country who don't really have any experience with First Nations people, but helping share our stories with them to engender empathy, because empathy was what brings change, So I do that, and then the jail thing is a similar thing. You know, unfortunately, the majority of children in our jails are Indigenous. Most recent prison I played at, Greg, was in Townsville. There was 103 kids the day I was there. 100 of them are Indigenous. You know, and they are as young as 10, and they're in maximum security prison. And I'm not okay with that. You know, so it's about going in and trying to be a good role model for those kids and just encourage them. And yeah, so that sort of keeps me busy during the day, and then doing shows at night keeps me busy.
Is it possible to be a First Nations artist and not be political?
Oh, I'm sure it is. My wife and I were talking this morning. I've been quite vocal about being pro yes for the Voice, and I've filmed a couple of ads for them, and I've played at some rallies and spoke. Actually, was a closing speaker at the Melbourne rally. And my wife said, "Are there any other Indigenous artists who are not vocal about the referendum at the moment?" I said, "Yeah, there's lots." You know, I don't think it comes down to race. I think it comes down to passion. What gets you out of bed? Like, the truth of it is, mate, that for me, music is a vehicle to make change for Aboriginal people. Now, it so happens that I'm a pretty good songwriter and I'm a pretty good singer, so it's a fit. But if there was a better way for me to make change for Aboriginal people, I would put my guitar down overnight. You know, I'd still play at home and all that stuff. But, you know, so it's probably not the right question for me, because as much as I love music, and I'm constantly listening to music, I'm driving my bandmates stupid in the tour van, right? I'm constantly making them listen to stuff they don't listen to. I can't get enough of music. So don't take this that I don't love music, because I do. But what gets me out of bed every day is trying to make change, because I'm tired of going to funerals. I'm tired of seeing kids getting locked up. I'm tired of seeing just poverty in a country as rich as Australia.
Yeah. So what's the message that you'd like to get across in regard to the Voice referendum?
Well, it's really simple. You know, I think politicians have got such devious agendas at times that they try to scare people, they try to confuse people. What I would say is, every single session I do, and I speak a lot in corporate Australia, I speak a lot in high schools, I do a lot of teacher training, so professional development for teachers. And at the end of every session, whether it's a teacher training session, it's a corporate session, it's a bunch of year 12 kids, I turn around and I ask this question, I go, "Have you enjoyed hanging out with an Aboriginal man today?" And they always say yes. And then I go, "Have you learned stuff about Australia today from hearing my stories?" And they say yes. And then I go, "Do you think our politicians deserve to have that same experience?" And you can see the light bulb going, because a lot of these politicians have never spent time in a community, not real time. They might have gone to a meeting or a board or or a briefing, but, and I think, I mean, one of my mottos, Greg, one of my mottos is, education leads to understanding leads to empathy. Empathy is what brings change. So we can stand and shout at people, or we can get alongside them and put our arm around them, have a beer with them, have a cuddle and share each other's stories and feel closer, and then find a way through the maze together.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping the Voice is going to achieve.
Yeah. Do you remember anyone coming into your school when you were younger and making an impression?
Gee, I wish I could say yes, but no.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I went to 7 schools, man. I moved around a lot, and I was just trying to survive most of the time. You know, my first, you don't realize when you're a kid, but when your family's dysfunctional, you're just in survival mode, and that was unfortunately the case. And so, school was pretty ordinary for me. I had a couple of years there that were good. Year 10 was good. I had a couple of mates, but even then it was only good because I made some friends. We moved out of Perth for 2 years, and I made a couple of mates, and we started surfing and fishing and spearfishing, and we didn't do a lot of schooling. And then year 12 wasn't too bad either. So I made a few friends at a new school there, and
Yeah. So you're doing this tour the old-fashioned way in the tour bus. What do you enjoy about that lifestyle?
Well, we're in a we're in a Ford Transit. It's a 12-seater van, and we've nicknamed it KC after my mate Kyle Chalmers, who's an Olympic swimmer. And I don't know if you saw the other night, but he was at the World Championships. He dived in the fourth. He was the fourth in the relay, and he was fifth. No, Australia were fifth. And then by the time Kyle Chalmers got done, they were first. So he carried his mates to victory. So I feel like the bus is going to carry us to victory around the country. So the bus is called KC. And yeah, we've got a trailer on the back of it. And yeah, so it's good. It's good fun. But that's the only way we can afford to do it. It'd be lovely to have a big tour bus with bunks and all that sort of stuff. But it's financially prohibitive at this point.
Yeah. So how much gear are you taking on the road? What, a couple of guitars?
Well, we've been very blessed, actually. Fender guitars have been incredibly generous, and Gretsch drums have been very generous, and Red cymbals have been very generous. So Fender have given us a couple of deluxe Tone Master amps, which are very light, because I usually play an Olbrich handmade 20-watt head with an open back 12-inch cab. I've got a couple of those, and but you don't want to be taking valves out around the country in a trailer. So Fender has given us a couple of amps, and they've I played the Fender Acoustasonic guitars, which they've thrown a couple of those at me. They gave us a Fender Rumble 800 with a 2x10 cab, which is amazingly generous, and then they gave us some top boxes as well. So we bought a couple of pre-Sonus subs. We've managed to borrow. Well, we've actually got racked up a Midas XR18, MR18 digital console with our in-ears racked into that. And so we've got our desk that's light and portable and cased up. So like last night we rolled in, and within 35 minutes we'd set up a whole PA, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, and I've got a Guild Starfire, which they made those Guild Starfires at Rhode Island for about 4 years. So if you can get a Guild Starfire from the Rhode Island plant, there's a 3 or 4 year window. They sound like Jesus made them. They're amazing guitars. So I've got one of those. I'm always on the lookout for a second. And I've got a Fender Strat. It's a Lincoln Brewster Special, which is it's a beautiful guitar. So I just got those two, and I've got my two Acoustasonics, and then Isaac's got his P-Bass, and and Phil, our drummer's got a beautiful kit that Gretsch Drums have given us for the tour. That's a Catalina kit, and on the proviso that we give it to a school that really needs a drum kit at the end of the tour. So we're going to give that to a school in need at the end of the tour.
As well as delivering your very important messages to the school kids, I'm sure you're inspiring some musicians of the future as well. Have you seen the sparkle in their eyes?
Oh, absolutely, mate. We did a session yesterday at Tennant Creek High, and the last session of the day was just a music session, helping kids get excited. And all these kids at the end of it were like, "Oh, I'm going to go get a guitar. Can we get guitars? Can we take them home, sir? Can we take them home?" And so that's exciting too, because music is such an amazing way for kids to be able to articulate in a way that maybe words can't. It can be therapeutic, and it can also, help you meet members of the opposite sex when you're a young fella struggling with the girls.
As we said earlier, you've got the album coming out, Deadly Heart, on October 27. Has it taken long for this album to come together?
Yeah, it's taken way too long, mate, to be honest. I started writing these songs 3 years ago, but then obviously, so I signed to Reclusive Records, which Michael Gudinski started before he passed away. But then obviously he passed away, and because it was his label, it was sort of a bit of like, well, what's happening next? And it took 12 months to sort of figure that out. And then the pandemic was happening, and so it has taken time. But in a way, I don't mind, because I think, those 2 years where the pandemic was on, it was such a state of flux within the industry, and you couldn't tour, and you couldn't, I couldn't have done this tour, for example. And I think it's, I was really conscious of wanting to write singles. So I think there's probably 7 or 8 songs on the record that you could probably drop as a single. I wanted 11, but, I settled on 7 or 8. But this, if I could say this without sounding like a dick, I think there's some really good songs on the record. I'm really proud of the songs. And I haven't always been able to say that with previous records. Is like, there's some 3 really good songs, and then there's some fodder at the back end. But I think with this one, they're all really, really good songs.
Yeah. Did you have a vision for the album as a whole, like theme wise, sonically?
Oh, sonically, yeah. It was funny because I had different people from within the music industry sit me down and actually had a meeting where I got sat down and said, "Listen, we think you should make a country rock record because rock music's dead. Like, doesn't stream. It's really hard. Go and do something where people will come and support it." And I went away, and business-wise, that makes complete sense, and I know that it's true to a large extent. But I just can't do it, mate. It would not be authentic. And I think anybody who sees me sing walks away going, "We love that guy because he's authentic and he's real." And the minute I start trying to sing songs, so yeah, there's lots of guitars, man. We recorded the whole thing through 2 valve amps, through the Olbrich 20-watt amp, but also I've got this little Mark DV head that Warwick Newman, who's a genius, rebuilt. And we had them mic'd up. So there's a lot of and it's mostly my Guild Starfire 4. It's my, I've got a 1979 Strat in Antigua Green, which sounds ridiculously good. And I've got a 1973 Telecaster. So those 3 guitars just got pounded, and they sound freaking big, and a nice big Marcus Miller jazz bass as well. So, for me, it was sonically, it was guitars and good guitar parts, and melodically good hooks. I want you to walk away with earworms.
The title track, Deadly Heart,
Yeah.
collaboration. Hayley Mary, how did that collaboration come about?
Yeah, it was pretty cool actually. I had somebody else, and I won't say who it was, but I had somebody else who is a amazing and a very well-known Aussie woman singer on it. And she recorded it, but then just different. She wasn't prepared to do promo, and she wasn't prepared to do some other stuff, and that was fine. Like, she's busy, I get it. So I was sort of trying to figure out, well, what do I do? Do I just still release it with that person, or? And then I did a songwriting hub for APRA. I sat on a panel, teaching people songwriting tips, and Hayley happened to be on it. We hadn't met before, and she needed a lift home, so I drove her home. I was on the way, and we just kind of got along straight away. She's a great girl. And I happened to mention, I said, oh, blah, 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 this thing's happening, and I don't know what to do. She goes, I'll sing it. I said, really? She goes, yeah. And it was that simple. She just rocked up and she smashed the session. Like, mate, she had it done in 15 minutes. She's an extraordinary singer, and she's an extraordinary front woman. If you see her play live, she's just, I keep teasing her. I go, because she's quite humble. I go, mate, you're like Stevie Nicks, but cooler. And she's like, oh, don't say that. But it's true. She is. She's like a young, cool Stevie Nicks who's done way less blow. So,
as you said, the album's coming out on the Reclusive label. Gudinski initiated the label.
yeah.
The film Ego about Michael is coming out in the film Melbourne International Film Festival. What are your memories of Gudinski? Did you have much contact with him?
Yeah, no, we were mates for several years before he signed me. So I signed my publishing to Mushroom back in 2016. And even that was funny, because what happened, I've been playing music for a long time and making my own records, but primarily focused on just going into high schools and playing in 100 schools a year to talk about culture and reconciliation. And then in 2016, I did this record because I sort of had this light bulb moment of, look, if I could maybe do more and be more well-known, I could make more difference to Aboriginal people. So I did a version of Solid Rock, and I got Shane Howard. I just asked him to sing on it, and there was no reason he should have said yes. I mean, at that point, no one knew who I was, right? And he's a legend. Like, what's he need me for? But he does. He says yes. Ridiculous. I mean, and the reason he said yes, of course, is because he's just an unbelievably kind person. Like, that's who he is. So we do it. Triple M started playing. It was completely independent. But Triple M started playing it, and then radio stations everywhere started playing it. It became the most played rock song in the country for 2 months on the radio. So then they rang me and they said, oh, do you want to go and sing it on Eddie McGuire's breakfast show on Triple M in Melbourne? I said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And Shane came down, thankfully, and did it with us. And MG happened to be there that day doing an interview. And he saw me. I played didgeridoo and guitar at the same time. And so he saw that. And then I got a phone call that afternoon from Ian James going, oh, Michael wants to sign your publishing. So I don't really know what that means, but oh, yeah, no worries, I'll do that. And the ironic thing is, of course, that he signed my publishing based on watching me sing a cover. But that's how Michael was. He wanted to keep you close, and he wanted to just keep an eye on you, And so we just got to know each other, and he loved blackfellas. He loved Aboriginal people, and he loved footy, and I love both those things. So we'd text each other about, I'm a passionate Geelong supporter, and he's a St Kilda man. We'd text about the footy, and we'd text about music, and, I'd hassle him every time I had a release. Oh, this is happening, this is happening. And I remember one, he'd ring me up. He rang me up one day, and he goes, do you like the Eagles? And I said, mate, I barrack for Geelong, you know that. Not the team, the band, you idiot. I said, oh, yeah, got some tickets for you. And just random, And then so I rocked up and picked the tickets up, and I thought they'd be, row Z Frontier. They were Michael's seats in row 3. They were $600 seats. That's what he's like. He'd ring you up and go, oh, do you want to go to the footy? You can have my super box. Like, he was so kind. And I loved him dearly. Like, he was a beautiful human. Like, yeah.
Yeah. The album's out October 27. What are your hopes for the album once it's out there?
Oh, look, I just hope that people can hear it. I think, it's funny. Like, I was talking to Johnny Took, who plays guitar in the DMAs, and he's married to Hayley. And we're just talking about the music in general. He looked at me and goes, you might have the greatest song in the world, but that doesn't mean people are going to hear it. And it's a sobering thought, It's like, these are the best songs I've ever written. And even, it's funny, with radio, even like in 2016, which is only 7 years ago, getting added to Triple M back then was a massive deal. Like, that, you knew that, like, my Shazams went berserk, and you knew people were going to hear your song. And I don't know that people listen to radio the same way they did 7 years ago, And so the way people access music is so diluted. And I think the challenge is, like, how do you ensure that people hear these fantastic songs? Everyone's so busy, and everyone's got the music they like. And, obviously the fans that are with you will hear it, but you want to build more fans, you want to grow your listener base and all those sort of things. And so I think that's the thing I'm sort of hoping, is that we can find a way to get these songs in front of more people, and in a way that they actually take them in rather than hearing them once while they're sort of shopping it. Because thankfully, Cold Radio have added the song, for example. So Deadly Heart's getting played when you're picking out your meat and your Omo. But, how do you actually get people to really hear it rather than just background? I mean, even Spotify playlists are great, but how many of those playlists are people actually actively listening? So, it's a tough one. But that's what I hope. I hope that people actually get to hear these songs.
Yeah. So you've got dates pretty much through to the end of the year. What have you got in store for 2024?
Not sure at this stage. I'll continue to do what I do in schools. There's an opportunity. I go to England. I've been going to England more and more because they love what I do in schools over there. So that's always fun. But I think I just want to really be able to spend some time with my family next year. I'm away from my wife and kids a lot for this tour. They're going to join me for sections of it. But I think at the moment I haven't really even thought too far ahead. I should probably be giving you the answer of, I'm going to make another record and I'll write songs and go at it again. But right now I'm just, I'm on the road now. I'm not going to be home till October 28th. So I'm just trying to get through this and do a good job, do good shows every night. And that's the challenge as well, is like, we turned up last night. We played an acoustic set at the Sporties in Tennant Creek, and it's a Wednesday night. And we're actually pretty pleased because we had, 50 or 60 people turned up, but it's a Wednesday night in Tennant Creek. And how many people know about my music in Tennant Creek anyway? So, you've got to be able to motivate yourself and get up and give those guys the greatest show you can give them. Just trying to bloody do good shows, mate. And next year, hopefully it'll take care of itself. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. What are you most proud of so far in your music career?
There's a couple of things, I think. I had a friend I grew up with who she got breast cancer and got very sick, and she was living in London, and she had a little boy. She'd only just had him. She needed cash, and so I organised with Sylvie Palladino, who's an old friend of mine who sings, sort of theatre, and a young friend of mine, Fatai, who was on The Voice in season 1, and we got together and recorded the song and put on a fundraiser and raised over 20 grand for her. And live streamed it, so she basically got to say goodbye to everyone, and she died a couple of weeks later. I was really proud of that, I think, because I loved her, and that was good. I don't know, man. I'm probably wired a little bit differently. Like, I've done some big festivals and I've played on some big stages. Like, we played 25,000 people at a Geelong game for AFL. That was pretty amazing. But that's kind of cool. But I don't think that those are the things I'm as proud of as the things where you get to actually, when you stand in front of a room full of school kids and know that you've actually impacted their lives. Those things are better. Or some of the jail shows I've done, or I think the things where that people's hearts or their minds or their lives have been improved as a result of what you've done. I think those are the things that I love the most.
Yeah. All right, Scott, it's been great to chat, and we'll catch you next time.
Mate, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the support.